And now, to officially kick things off, it's my pleasure to introduce Dean Richard Locke, whose vision for MIT Sloan highlights how management education can help lead on climate. Dean Locke is the John C. Head III Dean of the MIT Sloan School of Management, marking a return to MIT, where he spent many years on the faculty and served as Sloan's deputy dean. He previously served as provost at Brown University and dean of Apple University, bringing a unique perspective on leadership, innovation, and education. His work as a scholar of international political economy has consistently focused on bridging theory and practice. An award-winning teacher and researcher, he holds degrees from Wesleyan University, the University of Chicago, and a PhD from MIT. We're especially excited to welcome him back to Sloan at such a pivotal moment for climate leadership. Please join me in welcoming Dean Locke to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so wonderful to see all of you here today, and so wonderful to have you here at MIT Sloan. And welcome to MIT, and welcome to ClimateCAP 2026. Let me just begin my remarks by giving thanks. First of all, to all of you for taking the time to come here and to invest in this really important work. This is really, I think, one of the most essential issues of our times, and to have so many people thinking about how we actually think about marrying sort of business management with sustainability is critical. So I want to thank you for that. But I also want to thank my colleagues in the Sloan Sustainability Initiative, Jennifer, Patrick Young, Jason, I see John back there, and the whole team that put together this really amazing conference. I was just speaking to some of the student organizers outside, and just the energy is just really infectious in a good way, which is wonderful. Now, I just want to say a couple things about why I think this conference is so great. In many ways, it reflects MIT and MIT Sloan's long-standing commitment to climate and to sustainability. Almost 20 years ago, John Sturman and Jason and I and a few other colleagues, we came together to create the Sustainability Initiative. And it was really interesting because at that time, I think the administration of Sloan was somewhat skeptical of this. They were kind of okay, but we were talking and we were teaching different things. John taught system dynamics. I taught global entrepreneurship. Rebecca Henderson, who was also here, was teaching tech strategy. And we realized that we also were always thinking about sustainability and how to bring it back, how to bring it into our classroom, not just as a side issue or a side project, but make it part of what we were doing. And so we were trying to experiment this, and we actually went to the dean's office, and of course they took, it was a very good deal for them, and basically said, we will teach this class for free. We will continue doing our day, teaching, but we think it's really important that we launch a series of courses, project-based internships, other things for our students, because our students want this. And we also wanted to make sure that we were communicating that you didn't have to it wasn't a trade-off. Like you could either have a great career or you could care about sustainability. And it was like either or. I'm like, no, you could do both. You didn't have to leave your values and your aspirations about life at the door once you entered, the MBA classroom. You could do both. And fortunately, they said, yeah, if you want to teach extra, go right ahead. We did. And it was a wonderful experience. It was great because we were all friends. We learned a lot from one another, but we learned even more from our students and from the projects that they were doing. It was incredible. And so it's so wonderful to see how that initiative has continued over the years, and how this conference in many ways is kind of the sort of continuation of that work and the fruition of that work. And what were we trying to do, aside from creating a space for learning about sustainability in the School of Management, which these days is not so unusual, although maybe then some schools did it, not others. But what we really wanted to do was to create a space that had courses, that had action learning, internships, that had job possibilities, that did research, that blended together, whether it was with private companies or NGOs or other organizations, to blur the boundaries between what we were trying to do and what others were trying to achieve. And I think we really did create that space. And so since then, what we've done is, most importantly, is built a community. And that really is the most important thing. There are over 800 alums who have graduated with a sustainability certificate, which is if you took a number of classes and did some activities, you would earn. There's over 140 courses now across MIT that somehow touch climate or energy or sustainability. And by the way, at MIT, you can cross-register and across any of these classes, which is really great. Countless numbers of internships, of jobs, of opportunities, et cetera. And this is, I think, really why this work is so important, because we're able to show that if you bring people together who are passionate about trying to improve the world, but also make sure that they can see that they can also do well by themselves as well, that marriage of those two things really was a winning formula. Now, these days, there's some very obvious headwinds, right, coming out of Washington, but not just the U.S. Capitol. Other countries are also maybe backsliding on some of the ideas or commitments around climate and sustainability. And that's why I think this work is even more important today than it was 20 years ago when we were initially launching this initiative. This is why the work that you are all doing is so important, because especially at times like these where maybe it's not politically fashionable to be doing this kind of work, that's why we have to double down and do it, to show that by doing this kind of work, this is also going to lead to greater prosperity, more jobs, green jobs, healthy jobs, et cetera, and that we don't have to have this trade-off. We can actually improve the planet and improve the world and create prosperity that is widely distributed. Just to give you a sense of that, so MIT, we have a president who's been in place for 2 years now, a little over 2 years. And she has tried to kind of rally the university around a very small number of strategic initiatives. They're called presidential initiatives. The very first one she launched was around climate and clean energy. And the idea was that this is one of the existential challenges of our times. This is one of the most important things that we have to work on. Let's put a stake in the ground, rally people around that so that they can actually tackle one of these really big issues. And that's what's happening at MIT. So that MIT, notwithstanding the challenges of these times, is still concentrating on this important issue. And that's what we're doing at MIT Sloan. We're making sure that our role, and this is the way I think about schools of management, business schools in general, is that being embedded in universities gives us a very sort of privileged role. The way that I think about MIT Sloan is that we are the ones who help translate those amazing innovations that are taking place in other parts of campus, in engineering and science, urban studies and planning, et cetera. And we're the ones who translate those innovations into new enterprises, or new business models for existing enterprises, or new public policies, or new ways of thinking about the world and the possibilities of the world. That's our role. And so we translate it into actually practical solutions in real-world organizations. That's how I see the work that we do. And again, that's why I think this work is even more important today than it was 10, 15, even 20 years ago. When I think about this conference and the theme, leading through complexity, I see this as completely aligned with Sloan's mission and MIT's mission. And so what I want to do is just conclude by urging all of you to kind of lean into this work and lean into these challenges. I have found that I've grown the most and learned the most, not when I'm faced with challenges, I lean away, but actually when I lean in. And it's tough. It's much harder than leaning away. But when you lean in, especially when it's challenging, that's when you start thinking more creatively. That's when you start building different kinds of alliances and networks. That's when you can sort of innovate in ways that are really important for you as individuals, for the organizations that you're affiliated with, and for the world as a whole. So what I want to encourage you all to do over the course of this conference, over the weekend, is meet each other, engage with the wonderful panelists and with one another. Yeah, it's tough. These are tough times. We can't pretend that they're not. But lean into that in a way that can actually innovate in the way that the world needs from all of us. So thank you. Have a wonderful conference, and welcome to MIT Sloan. Take care.